there were very interesting things said here, but I want to be more specific in what I did and what Eastern Europe did during the time with respect to space exploration. And my proposal is to listen to a presentation about an Eastern European retrospective of space exploration from 1967 till 1990, and what Romania does now in respect with these space activities. Actually, we started to look at the sky a long time ago. Actually, from our observatories in 1957, it was observed the first Sputnik and perturbation of the orbit. And then, we started to work in a way from theoretical point of view. The practical things started to be developed in the beginning of 60s. In 1967, an international program started in Eastern Europe. It was the Intercosmos program. And Romania signed the first agreement in the framework of this program in 1968. And the program was aimed to develop in Eastern European countries research institutions connected with space activities, and also to form new specialists to deal with this kind of activity and to use Soviet rockets to launch experiments into space. Such way in 1976, in the framework of this Intercosmos program, started the program of manned space flights. The first group of Intercosmos program was trained in Russia starting with 1976 till 1978, and the first non-Russian, non-American astronaut, cosmonaut, was Vladimir Remek from the Czech Republic, from Czechoslovakia in that time, who flew into space in March 1978. The second group of Intercosmos program started the training in 1978. I was part of it. And here we have the images of the space stations used by international crews flown with the Russians. Up there on the left side, it's Salyut 6. I was part of the crews visiting Salyut 6 at that time. You see it has only one module. It's a spacecraft docked on that side, on the right side. Then was Salyut 7, starting with 82 till 91. And then the space station Mir. It was before the International Space Station, from 86 till 2001. And you see here the cosmonauts that have flown with the Russians in that time. The first group of Intercosmos was Vladimir Remek from the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, Miroslav Hermaszewski from Poland, Zygmunt Jen from Eastern Germany. He just died 1 week ago. From the second group, starting the training together with me and together with my Romanian partner, Dumitru Prunariu, was Gheorghe Ivanov from Bulgaria, Bertalan Farkas from Hungary, Pham Tuan from Vietnam. He came 1 year later than we came in the Star City, but it was a political decision from the Russians to train them as well and to fly in this order. Tamayo Arnaldo Mendez was the first colored person. I can't say it's Afro-American because it's Latin. It's a mix of many nationalities, but it's the first black person that have flown into space. Jugderdemidin Gurakcha flown in March 81, just 2 months before I flew into space in May 81. You have an image here of all of us when we started the training in Star City. I'm on the right upper side of this picture, and with the original autographs of all of them, so I have at home this picture. And after we flew into space, the Soviet Union started to have into space Western astronauts. And the first Western one flew into space was Jean-Luc Chrétien from France. They were trained together with us. They came to Star City in 1980s, and 1 year we trained together. And then he flew into space. The second French trained by the Russians was Patrick Baudry. And then the French ones have very good relations with NASA as well, and they sent both of them to NASA then, and Patrick Baudry was the first one flown on a space shuttle, and Jean-Luc Chrétien was the backup then. Taking into account that relations with NASA and Russia of France were very good, Jean-Luc Chrétien succeeded to fly the second time, also with the Russians, and the third time with the space shuttle. So Jean-Luc Chrétien is the only European having 3 space flights accomplished. Also the Russians sent into space people from India, Rakesh Sharma, from Syria, Mohammed Ahmad Faris, another Bulgarian one, because the first flight of the Bulgarian just failed. They barely came back to the Earth in very tough conditions. Then from Afghanistan, Abdullah Mamad, who lives from many, many years in Germany as a refugee from Afghanistan. And again, Jean-Luc Chrétien. Of course, they continue to send some other astronauts, cosmonauts into space. I may say that the first Western astronaut flown with a space shuttle was in 1983, Ulf Merbold from Germany, in 83. Jean-Luc Chrétien flew in 82. It's considered the first Western sent into space. Look, a map of the countries that have cooperation in the framework of the Intercosmos program in that time. So the red one, of course, is the Soviet Union. It was also always red. And the other ones in green were the partner countries, including Cuba, you see, far away from Russia, but having some political good relations with them. Of course, the Intercosmos program was worldwide promoted because it was considered a program, a successful program shown by the Eastern Europe to the Western countries. Of course, at that time, the competition was very tough, and anyone wanted to show that it's best in the field. Look, a lot of marks with the Intercosmos program. I have my own Romanian marks at home, of course. But I want to pass now to Romania. What Romania did in that time. Till my space flight, till I flew into space in 1981, Romania already produced 17 equipments to be sent into space. They were sent on the Russian rockets and accomplished a lot of experiments on behalf of Romania and on behalf of some cooperating states around, because some of these experiments were done in cooperation with some other countries, neighbors of Romania. You have on the right upper side an image of the scientists of that time that worked for the space program. And you have some equipments and satellites sent into space with experiments from Eastern Europe. And on the left side down, it's an experiment I did myself in space, Astro, an experiment planned to measure the space radiation, the particles charged with energy into space. Okay, now coming to my space flights, I was trained between 1978 and 1981 to fly into space together with my, at that time, future backup, Dumitru Prunariu. From each country, we were 2 persons because the space flight was so important that it cost a lot of money. In case one of us had some problems, the second one was able to fly into space and to represent its country. I did it together with Leonid Popov from Russia. We were trained together for almost 1 year. We are a very well-prepared crew, and we accomplished 22 experiments on behalf of Romania in the field of astrophysics, space radiation, space technologies, space medicine, and biology. I accomplished 125 orbits around the Earth. Length of my space flight was about 5,260,000 kilometers around the Earth in 8 days. A few things about the selection for the space flights. You have a few images from 1977, the time when I was selected for the space flight. I just volunteered for the space flight. Nobody obliged me to fly into space or to choose to fly into space. Here in this room were at least 5 persons graduate from the same university, University Polytechnic of Bucharest, same airspace engineering faculty. It's of course Bogdan, Virgil, who already spoke, me, my wife, and a colleague of my wife who is here, Sergiu Popovski. And it's also a graduate of the same university. I was a graduate of this university and I accomplished my military service, and I never thought to fly into space. I just wanted to fly with airplanes, to build airplanes, and I accomplished my military service, and the commander came and said, guys, we have to select somebody to fly into space. Who is volunteering for such a thing? We thought that it's no reason to fly into space because Romania is so far from such an activity, and we have to continue to work in the factories, in the research institutions as engineers, aviation engineers. But the proposal was became interesting when the commander said that you have to fly a military airplane to Bucharest. We're in the city of Bacău. It's about 250 kilometers from Bucharest. You will have medical investigation full on behalf of the Ministry of Defense, free. And we said, maybe, why not? We have to know what is happening with our body at that age. And I was already married and I had 1 child, the first one. I have 2 boys. And the first one was born, but my wife was still a student in Bucharest. We graduated 1 year. She graduated 1 year after I graduated. And I said, okay, why to stay 1 more week in the military unit instead of spending some time with my wife in Bucharest? And I raised the hand. And I volunteered for space. Never thinking at that time that I will be able sometimes to fly into space. I said, I just travel to Bucharest, I see my wife, and I come back to the military unit. And that's all. Okay, I passed all the medical tests, I was selected, and in the fall of '77, the things became much more serious. 7 of us were selected as first group of people, started to be trained in Romania. A few of them, they are here. I'm in the middle with a flight instructor, and up there in the military uniform is the Russian teacher. And started the training, started to fly MiG-15s just to feel the speed and to feel an airplane, a military airplane. Also, we were trained to jump with the parachutes. At least we had a training then, and we jumped in Russia. We had lessons of outer space, space environment, space technology, what was known in Romania at that time, just to have a general image of what we have to do in Russia. And 2 of them, they went out from the team by their own wish. And then another 2 were dismissed because of some medical problems. In the end, 3 of us went to an institute, medical and biological institute for space and aviation in Moscow, passed some tests that we couldn't do in Romania, like the centrifuge and a lot of other investigations. And 2 of us were eventually selected to be trained for 3 years, and 1 of us had to fly into space. I had a chance to be younger than my partner. He was 10 years older. I had a chance to graduate from the university just 2 years before I started training for space, and I still had the feeling of university, of learning very hard and very fast. And the Russian language, of course, in the beginning was difficult, but we live in that environment. We had a very good teacher, and I could say that in half a year I could speak pretty good Russian. And after 1.5 years, when we finished the language, lessons, I could speak like Russians, just thinking Russians, because it was one of the goals of the teacher to make us think in the language, in the Russian, to not translate in our heads when we are in a very difficult situations up there, and to communicate directly and to speak directly in that language. Of course, at that time, nobody thought that we need sometimes English, because the Russians just taught in Russian. On board the space station, we spoke only Russian. And I just had an interview for our television in Romanian. And then in Romanian just after my space flight. During the space flight, we spoke only Russian. So, some images from my training, weightlessness in an airplane, to Polev 104 at that time, a very old airplane. Some training at the centrifuge. All the time I had some medical sensors on my body to measure all parameters during the training. Of course, during that time, I lived with my family in Star City, near Moscow. So my wife followed me and my children followed me. And here you have an image of our family. So my son, who is on my shoulder there, it's now a professional commercial pilot. It's 44 now. And the young one, it's in the hands of Popov's wife, and Krina, it's in the middle there. Of course, we came every year at home for our holidays for 1.5 months. We passed the holidays in Romania. And after 3 years, one of us had to fly into space. We flew to Baikonur 2 weeks before the start. In Baikonur, 2 days before the launch, the main crew was officially announced. I mean, me and Popov. Of course, everything was set up a little bit earlier because it depends a lot of our results, and my and Popov results at the exams and all practical tests were highest than anybody else there. We were young, we were very determined to fly into space. And you have an image of Dedio and Romanenko, the backup crew. Yuri Romanenko flew already with the Cuban crew, and it was known that an astronaut who have flown with an international crew doesn't fly with a second one could be a backup. So, but we are not very sure about the final result of this thing. Actually, I succeeded to be the 103rd astronaut cosmonaut of the world, and Romanenko has a son. His son is also a cosmonaut. He flew 3 times into space, and he was the 103rd cosmonaut of Russia. So just by hazard, there are some coincidences. But also connected with 103, I could tell you another short story. When I was in high school, I took part in some scientific and technical contest. It was named Mini Technicus in Romania. And I've got, when I was 17 years old, I've got the membership number 103. I couldn't think at that time that after just 11 years after I've got this number, I will be the 103rd cosmonaut of the world. So a few things about the spaceflight itself. I was launched with a Soyuz rocket on 14th of May, in the evening of 14th of May, into space. Me and Popov just before going up in the rocket. You see the rocket has a lot of engines at the first stage. All them 20 engines, they function in the same time. And you reach the outer space in just 8 minutes and 50 seconds. In 8 minutes and 50 seconds, starting from zero, from the ground, you reach a speed of 28,000 kilometers per hour. So you understand that the G's inside the rocket, they are pretty high. We reach about 4G. And when the last drop of fuel of the third stage finished to burn, we reached the weightlessness. And instantly, we just started to float inside the spaceship in a full silence. You know, there is not air outside. Even if it's a blow up outside the rocket, you don't listen anything because it's not an environment to propagate the vibration. You have the image of my space station, Salyut 6, with another spacecraft docked to to Salyut 6. Is the spacecraft of the main crew who waited us up there from about 2 months. They worked about 2 months in the space till we arrived. A few images from inside the space station. The main crew is in light blue. I'm in blue there dressed. Kovalionok and Savinuh, they were experienced astronauts flying to space. Popov was also a very experienced cosmonaut because he flew on board the same Salyut 6 space station before my flight for 186 days. And me as a new one who learned a lot during my space flight, suffered a lot, but accomplished a very successful mission. We accomplished all our experiments. We succeeded to live in the space for 8 days together, to work together. Look, some images. I slept in a sleeping bag on the ceiling of the space station. It was a honorary place, they said. Okay. Here I take some images of the Earth through a window. Up there on the right upper side, I drink some water through a tube. And here we eat. We have a lot of tubes, boxes with food. Some other images. Medical experiments every day, twice a day. I had all these sensors on my body, measuring all my parameters that were translated through telemetry to the ground and analyzed by the doctors down there. A lot of equipment for different experiments. I deal with, you see here, I just fix a TV camera. And after 7 days into space, I had to land together with Popov. You see us just after landing. The Russians named this type of landing soft landing because we landed on the ground. But it's not at all soft, I tell you. It's a very hard shock when you reach the ground. But bottom line, I flew for 7 days, 20 hours and 42 minutes in the audio space. And I told you about the kilometers I did, and the maximum altitude I reached was 385 kilometers. Usually the space station flies an altitude of 350, 370, 80, no more than 400 kilometers high, because higher they are, the level of radiation is much higher than at 350 kilometers. It's very dangerous for the body. Okay, a little bit about Europe, what Europe does now, what Eastern Europe does now into space. Actually, the Central and Eastern European countries developing space activities and managed space flights within Intercosmos program are now full members of the European Union. Czech Republic, Poland, United Germany now, Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovak Republic, they have their own cosmonauts. All have cooperation agreements with ESA, with the European Space Agency, most of them being already full members. Romania was the second full member of the European Space Agency after the Czech Republic from Eastern Europe. And these countries came into the European Union and ESA with their space historical heritage and enriched the overall heritage of Europe. A few things about the Romanian Space Agency and what we do now in space. I told you we are full members of the European Space Agency now, but we started in 1991. Before 1991, in Romania existed a Romanian Commission for Space Activities within the National Council for Science and Technology. It was an interministerial body. In 1990, everything was disorganized, and I, and together with some friends working in the field of space, considered that it is very necessary to organize a space agency as fast as possible and to gather all the knowledge we had before, to keep together some institutions and some scientists. About half of the scientists went out. Some of them, they are in the United States, some in Europe, and we succeeded to organize and to have a governmental decision to organize the Romanian Space Agency in 1991. And in 1995, we reorganized the Space Agency as a non-budgetary institution. 100% non-budgetary institution, living from projects signed with the government, with different ministries, environment, agriculture, communications, and with the local communities, remote sensing for different activities on the ground. And the financing of the space activities was pretty good from the very beginning, because the officials understood that this new type of activities, they are very necessary, not only for Romania, but Romanian projects to be exported to some other countries. Now the Romanian Space Agency is the representative and coordinator of space activities in Romania, the financing agency for research in space, aeronautics and security, because we develop some security programs now. The first finance program was in 2001, named STAR program, and now we have a new financement, multi-year budget, from 2012 to 2019. We are also the coordinator of the Interministerial Group for Security Research. We are the public authority responsible for specific national critical infrastructures and national coordinator for space situational awareness, GNSS, Global Navigation Satellite Systems, and also for the Galileo systems. Farther on, okay, I said that we are already members of ESA and some other international authorities, programs, consortiums. You see all of them there, and I don't insist too much. We have a lot of bilateral agreements. And I want to show you just a few pictures. In 2000, I signed the first agreement between NASA and Romania. Dan Goldin was the administrator of NASA at that time, a very tough and very serious person. We succeeded to invite him to visit Romania in 1999. It was a total solar eclipse. And we had the first discussions about a possible agreement between NASA and Romania. And he agreed to work on this. And in 2000, I went to Washington. It's me there signing the agreement together with John Schumacher. At that time was the deputy NASA administrator for international relations. And behind us was Dan Goldin, the Prime Minister of Romania of that time, Muguri Sărescu, and some other officials. In 2011, we signed the agreement with ESA, with the European Space Agency, and became full members. Till that time, we had two other agreements with ESA were monitored in many fields to be able to conduct research at a high level, to manage international projects. And then when ESA was convinced that we could become full members, face all the programs of ESA, we signed the agreement. Okay, I had a lot of other activities, international activities. I represent Romania at the UN Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. Bogdan said a few words about this committee. I was the chairman of the scientific and technical subcommittee of this committee from 2004 to 2006, the chairman of the full committee from 2010 to 2012, and now I'm the vice chairman of the working group Space 2030 Agenda, and I still continue one more year to be the vice chairman of this working group. And Marius Piso, who is now the president of the Romanian Space Agency, starting with next year for 2 years, will be the chairman of COPOS also. There I have an award from NASA with a flag of Romania flown into the outer space. And now there I'm leading a session of this committee. I'm involved in much more activities than just the activity with ESA and with the UN. I deal with the asteroids from a long time. We started the research in the framework of the asteroids together with the Association of Space Explorers. It's the association of all astronauts and cosmonauts in the world, I could say. We are now more than 400 members from 37 nations. I was one of the founders in 1985. We are 25 from 13 countries at that time. And led by Rusty Schweikart, an Apollo 9 astronaut, we organized a working group on near-Earth objects and succeeded to write a very well-organized and well-documented report that was presented to the United Nations as a working paper and became a working document of the United Nations. I introduced this organization of astronauts and cosmonauts to the United Nations, and it became an observer of the UN. And because I was much involved, and also I proposed to the General Assembly to adopt a resolution recognizing 30th of June as the International Asteroids Day, I became the first official Asteroid Day ambassador. And this is the diploma. And the diploma is signed by the founders of the Asteroid Day. It's an event, international event to promote science, technology, and knowledge about the asteroids. The first who signed the diploma is Brian May, the guitarist of Queen. He's a doctor in astrophysics, and it's working on asteroids besides playing guitar. The second one is Danica Remi. It's the CEO of the B612 Foundation, dealing with asteroids in the United States, in San Francisco, by the way. It's not so far from this place. Grigory Richters, it's a filmmaker who is promoting very hard movies about the asteroids, and Rusty Schweikart, the Apollo 9 astronauts, a very old friend of mine. So it's what I do now. Romania is very much involved in the Galileo program. Galileo is the global navigation and positioning system of Europe. In the Copernicus program, an eye on Earth, it's a high-resolution provider of images from the outer space for Europe. And also we are involved in the development of the new European rocket, Ariane 6. It was approved at an interministerial meeting of ESA that Romania could be involved in the industrial development of Ariane 6. We are now pressing things to get as much as possible for us. It's a big battle in Europe between France, Germany, Italy, big countries to produce different parts of these rockets in their countries, but also Romania is able to do such things. The National Space Strategy now has three constant objectives since 90s. Participation to international space missions and programs, development of specific national projects, and capacity building at national level. Okay, it's a law that approves all these things, the partnerships with ESA. But what is most important now, we developed the strategy in accordance with the so-named 3S strategy. We are involved in science and technology, the first S, including space exploration, field of applications for all areas of science and driver for most technological domains. In services, we are involved as a space agency in services, telecommunications, Earth observations, integrated applications, precising farming, telemedicine, disaster management, meteorology, and security. Planetary defense, it's part of the security, space weather, space traffic management. We try to participate at European level at development of the Space Situational Awareness entity. For now, we take part in the Space Surveillance and Tracking, SST. We are involved in disaster management, peacekeeping, arms control, illegal trafficking, demining, cybersecurity, and monitoring of global issues. These are all included in the security problems. At the horizontal level, we are much involved in the industrial development and access to space. materialization of the present and the actual trend of space development. Okay, we have a lot of centers of competence in Romania, developed with the help of the Romanian Space Agency, a center for small satellites from 1 to 40 kilograms in low Earth orbit. Tested integration. We have a center of competence for test and integration. We pretty have good results. Some countries come to us with different parts of the satellites to be tested in Romania now. Center for Launchers and Spaceflight, micro launchers. We are developing together with Poland the micro launcher at the level of Europe. Center for Planetary Sciences, outer space body, asteroids. We take part in the development of such studies. Center for Laser Technology, power lasers, radiation and hardening. It's in the Magurele Center. Center of Competence for Wireless Intra-Satellite Technologies. Center for Navigation, Guidance and Flight Control. Center for Human Spaceflight Support. Center for Big Data for Space. We have a private company dealing with big data at the European level. We are the 5th recognized player in Europe at this level. We have a center on Black Sea and Lower Danube studies, so using space technologies. Center for Atmospheric Studies, a center on space applications for agriculture, and more than 100 organizations now work together with the Romanian Space Agency, take part in tenders for different projects at the national, at ESA level. And look, just an image, synthetic image of where in the country we have centers. Red, they are universities taking part in space research. Yellow, it's industry. And orange is institutes and different facilities. In Ploiești, near Ploiești, it's old rocket factory, military rocket factory, Crângul Bot. Okay, as an infrastructure, what we have now, we have high-speed testing facilities at INCAS, National Institute for Research in Aviation and Space. Microsatellite Test and Integration Center, it's in Magurele. Radiation Test and Hardening Facility, National Institute for Physics of Lasers. Satellite ground stations in Bucharest and Cluj. Cheia ground Q-monostatic radar for space surveillance and tracking. We transformed just the Cheia big antennas. We have 2 big antennas, 32 meters in diameter. They were used in the former time for communications from Indian Ocean to satellites, satellites to Romania, send the message to telecommunication satellites above the Atlantic Ocean and to the US. So now we transform all these facilities. They are not anymore used for telecommunications in center for surveillance and tracking of different bodies into the outer space, asteroids, space debris. It's a lot of space debris that's put danger on satellites. And also we have a center for micro launchers and space robotics in Măneciu, Romania. Future larger projects. GeoSatcom for public institutions, satellite Earth observation data reception and processing center, spaceport on the Black Sea at Capu Media. There is a facility, former military facility for launching rockets, and we want to transform it into micro rockets launching place of ESA, and also optical space surveillance and tracking and communications networks. Okay, we were very active during the Romanian presidency of the European Union. We invest about 28 million euros in space. In 2017, that was that number. We participate in 17 programs of the European Union. A lot of investment in this field. ISA ensure a fair return of this money. We pay this money to ISA, but they come back in the percentage of about 97%. About 3% they are for the functioning of the institution itself at the international level. At the level of Europe, we take part also in the programs developed by the European Commission, but then by tenders we can take back about 50–60%, no more of the money we pay. But from the European Space Agency we take back all the money and develop the infrastructure in Romania and programs. Okay, I think it's time to finish. A few things about the national space programs. The funding just decreased for research and development in the last years. Now we have from the government only 7.17% from the GDP for science. The recommendation of the European Union is to have 1% from public funds for science and technology developments. We had about 10–12 years ago about 0.8%, and it was very good for research. Now we fight for having more. We'll see what happened with the new government, when the new government will be installed, and so on. We'll have presidential elections very soon. We'll see what happens after that, but we hope for more funding because everything has a good result in development of science and technology using the space activities. We have a new strategy for 2020 and 2027 to be developed, and the project started in September this year. The organizational governance of ROSA, Romanian Space Agency, is under study towards increasing stability, including financial stability now. And the Bucharest International Center to be officially opened in the autumn, a little bit later, in the framework of the Polytechnica University Bucharest. We have an incentive scheme for industry. It's extended with 3 years from 2020 to 2022. Future new developments, Black Sea and Danube region-oriented projects, National Space Situational Awareness Center in the Romanian Space Agency. Quantum communications, we have some studies on quantum communications, a group to be established by ROSA in the end of this year. Space robotics and launcher centers in Incas and Măneciu, and support in Capu Media. National Security SATCOM program, the Ministry of Defense and the Romanian Space Agency, we just developed a satellite for communications for governmental use. And at the end, thank you for your attention, and I'm just waiting for questions. Thank you.
First of all, I'll make some comments, and then I will put toward me a very difficult question.
Wow.
And it's not going to be scientific. So my first comment is, I talked to your wife before you started speaking, and I told her that I looked at a show on television where you spoke, and I was very impressed then. You were speaking Romanian, of course.
Thank you.
And I was impressed because you were very fluent, because you were very knowledgeable, because you spoke very calmly and yet with a lot of substance. And you had an intonation of the voice which kept the interest of the person who looks at you alive. So I congratulate you for now doing the same thing in English.
Oh, thank you.
And your wife
Actually, I do it sometimes in French and in Russian also.
and your wife
Thank you.
Your wife said after 37 years, 37, right? 37 years of speaking. No, there are people who speak for 50 years and they don't know how to speak. Secondly, I must say that I'm very proud that I'm Romanian. I have always been proud, and I don't understand people who are Romanian and are not proud of us. And that's true. We have scientists here like Bogdan, Marcu, and
Virgil,
Dumitrescu,
yes.
and we have you. That means
And many
we
others.
are great fellows, believe that we are great. And now comes the question. And I'm going to introduce myself because the question is related to who I am. My name is Coldea, and I'm a professor of automation engineering and teach fabrication at California State University. And the question was kind of answered to me by talking to your wife, but I want you to answer the question.
Okay.
I strongly believe that behind any man, a woman can be supportive, encouraging, and make him do this. I want to know what happened. What happened when you decided to go? What did your wife say?
You know, first, a problem was with my parents, because I was in high school. I already built small airplanes, small rockets. I was very fond in flying airplanes and building airplanes. And in Brașov, it doesn't exist an aerospace engineering faculty. The only one was the Faculty of Mechanics, the section of airplanes in the Bucharest University, Technical University. The Institute, Polytechnical Institute of Bucharest was at that time. I lived in Brașov. I graduated high school in Brașov. I told my parents that, yes, I want to go to Bucharest and to build airplanes and to fly airplanes. And they said, no. Why? Because it's dangerous. We have to keep you here in Brașov and so on and so on. But I was very tough, polite, but tough. No, I want there, I want there. I was very well prepared. I went to different Olympiads, mathematics, physics, and so on. And I went to Bucharest by myself. They just gave me some money. I went to Bucharest and I became a student. When I came from the military units and I already was selected in the first group of candidates, I said, okay, they didn't want to let me fly airplanes. What to tell them now that I want to fly a rocket? And I came first to my mother. I told, you know, I was selected for this thing, so I volunteered. And she looked at me and I said, oh, okay, now she says no. And she just said, you know, my dear son, if they really need you there, go. Oh, I was amazed and happy having such an answer from my mother. Then I came and, of course, Crina knew that we met in Bucharest during my training, and she said, yes, go. But never thinking that I'll fly into space. All the time during my training, 3 years of training, she encouraged me. We were together with a family in Star City. She said, yes, go, but thinking that I will be the second one and staying on the ground. And then after the space flight, she said, okay, congratulations, but you know, I really hoped to stay at home with me and with the children and not to fly into space and then to become a public person and to be on the road all the time, traveling across the world. But she was behind me. She really was behind me as an aviation engineer. She understood all these things, and we're happy eventually. Okay, bravo, Crina. So I did answer your question?
Yes, you answered my question.
Okay, thank you.
I want to end by saying that besides all these people who are good, the Viitorul Romanian Society has to be congratulated also for this kind of event.
Thank you.
I've got a question.
Okay, please, Mr. General Consul.
It's well known that beginning with the last year and with this year, the project from Magurele platform is on. So Romania
The laser, you mean the laser or?
Yes, the
yeah.
extreme light infrastructure.
Yes, that's right.
Facility that includes the most powerful laser in the world and one of the most powerful gamma radiation generator in the world. We already partners with the U.S. Universities and government in developing projects there.
The general director will be in 2 weeks in Washington, D.C.
Yes, but missions unfit, yeah, no. How the Romanian space agencies is intending to integrate the facility from Eli with the work of the agency for the space research and all the energy things that come from there, including the travel to space?
Actually, this laser doesn't belong to the Romanian Space Agency. We are just partners in some studies. And there are some studies of removing from the outer space the space debris using lasers, very powerful lasers for small parts of space debris. It's one side. But on the other side, physics, space physics, it's much connected with the activity of this laser. And there are scientists working together on different projects, together with Space Agency and this laser. Okay, the things are under development there. The things are still under development, but a team of scientists already work in laser problems, research from many years in Romania, because Romania was selected to host this European unique facility because we had quite an experience, an old experience in laser technology, yes, during the time.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
I have a question. We talk about lasers, we talk about Wi-Fi, we talk about all this international exchange of waves. Is it any study how they affect us, our health, our life? Because we don't feel it, but we have it even now. We are surrounded all the time. What is the long-term effect of this? Because we will be overwhelmed by them.
Yeah, it's actually it's not my field of expertise, but I can tell you that there are studies. There are studies, and some of them they are known, some of them they are still under investigation. I may tell you that I used the mobile phone from many years, from the very beginning. The level of radiation of the first phones was much higher than this one. We start to use the 5G technology. It's a business, a very tough, high business. Stopped by some, promoted by others, but in the end, this business will be developed by private companies anywhere. I don't have any problem myself. I don't know about you or other people, but I'm in a very good health. Staying with a phone all the time near to my ear. Okay.
So Dr. Prunariu, definitely we are very thrilled to have you here. So
Thank you.
I have a question about your mission. So I imagine that every hour of the day, every day was very well pre-planned. So I have kind of a two-part question is, through your mission, through those almost 8 days that you spent, was in space, was anything unexpected that happened? And how were you trained for unexpected? How to handle that?
Okay. I may tell you that during my training, 3 years of training, about 2 years was theory. Theory about the space environment, space activities, space experiments, about the construction of the spacecraft with all equipment on board, all technical details, construction of the rockets with all technical details and exploitation. And we had about 1 year of training at the simulators. During this year, about 80% of the training was done supposing that something bad will happen in the space and how do we face different situations. From outside, from the ground, from the control center, they were simulated a lot of damaging situations on board the spacecraft, on board the rocket, and so on. And we were taught how to deal with each of them. I can tell you that a red book with the special situations that could happen on board the spacecraft and the rocket was used by us during the training. And after every space flight, this book became bigger and bigger. and we have to learn more and more. Even during our space flight, something happened. There is no space flight with at least a small special situation. During our space flight, a device that should measure the ionic flux into space to orient the spacecraft with the engine in front of it and to turn on the engine in the right time and to land in very automatic situation when it was supposed that the crew is not able to act on board the spacecraft. It just failed. And the orientation of the spacecraft couldn't be accomplished in case of the necessity of an automatic landing. And it just happened. It scared me a little bit at that time. But according to our knowledge, we had to use the information from other devices to integrate them and to have a final result and to take a decision what to do and how to do. And I knew how to do all these things. Another event, during the landing, our parachute opened later than normal. From the time when the top of the container of the parachute is ejected, it takes exactly 16.5 seconds till the big parachute is opened. And we filled the container open, we filled the extracting parachute going out, we filled a lot of other things, but stay with the chronometers, with the timer, and said 16, 17, 18, we became white. I look at Popov, he look at me. We listen in our headsets the sound and the discussions in the command center near Moscow. And the full silence, just listen. I didn't listen anything, it was a full silence there. And we understood that something bad is happening. But eventually the parachute just opened. When the parachute just opened, we just heard in our sets that, "Hurrah, they are saved." And only then we understood that the situation was really, really intriguing and bad. But the parachute opened and we landed safely. It happens, anytime happens something. But happens much tougher things like the catastrophe of Challenger and Columbia and the catastrophe of the Soyuz A-11 in 1967, when 3 cosmonauts died during the landing because of desermatization of the command module. And also with Soyuz 1, cosmonaut Komarov, Vladimir Komarov, died because the parachute didn't open. And they knew before launching him that could have big problems with the parachute, but almost launched him into space and sacrificed him. Sometimes happen such things. I could, if we count, about 4.5% of the astronauts and cosmonauts died during the mission. It's a dangerous, but in the same time very fascinating activity. They asked me after I landed, they asked me, would you like to go back to the space? And I said, yes, tomorrow if it's possible.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Remember I asked you when we first met at my house? And the question is simple. How did space feel like? What did you feel when looking through the small windows at our planet?
You know, the first thing that it's fascinating, just hits your eye, is the thinnest of the atmosphere above the Earth. The atmosphere is very, very thin. Just imagine an apple and the skin of the apple. The apple is the Earth and the skin of the apple is the atmosphere. It's shocking. And you just realize that all life is developing in this very thin atmosphere above the Earth. In the same time, we pollute the atmosphere. We do a lot of bad things connected with the Earth and with the atmosphere. It's shocking. Then you have the image of the Earth, turning around the Earth with a speed of 28,000 kilometers per hour. The feeling is that you stay in the space, just float somewhere up there, and the Earth just is turning above you with a very high speed. It's like a big stone, like a big and very powerful stone. This is the feeling you have looking at the Earth above you, just turning around. Of course, the first feeling, it's that you are a very small being into this space, very fragile, that could be hit by an asteroid, by a meteorite, by a space debris, and you just die, disappear, nobody knows what happened to you. But in the same time, you have the feeling of a very strong and powerful person that managed to build a technology that brought you there to the outer space and that ensured your security in flying around the Earth. There are two opposite feelings in the same time, and you have to deal with them during the entire space flight. Thank you.